Hello, folks. Welcome again to another episode of the Generative AI Meetup Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Shashank, and I have Mark here with me in person, in the flesh. He's visiting briefly after traveling all across North America and touching the edge of the Arctic Ocean, driving as far up north as he could in Canada and coming back. But we have a lot of exciting news to talk about, starting from robots. There's a bunch of new funding news for Figure AI on the startup side, and Tesla, with Elon buying $1 billion worth of Tesla stock to show his conviction in the new Optimus robot. Then we have a couple news items about Waymo, where they're finally approved to take rides as SFO, the international airport. Previously, they were only geofenced and allowed to offer rides in San Francisco and some parts of Mountain View. Then we also wanted to talk about some of the new AI features available in the latest iPhone and how they compare to some of the AI features already available in some of the Pixel phones. But first, I think, Mark, you wanted to chat a little bit about OpenAI's GPT-4B and their capability in biology and medicine. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, so this is super exciting. So first of all, guys, thanks for listening again. It's really great to be back in the Bay Area, even though it's for a really short time. I'll be here for maybe a few weeks, I think. We had some errands to do, some dentists to go to, specifically is why we're here. But, super happy to be here. So I'm going to try to come to the next meetup in person if we can. So we'll see, but that's the goal.
That would be amazing. So for those of you here in the Bay Area, our next event is going to be something I'm personally really excited about. It's going to be focused on coding agents. We will have a bunch of different companies that focus on the developer tooling and allow you to supercharge your entire workflow with AI, everything from designing to the IDE to having AI automatically review code for you, optimize it by making your Python code faster, sending pull requests asynchronously with async agents that have VMs in the cloud that run your code, make changes, deploy, test, and do everything for you. So this is going to be a really exciting event. And we're also hosting this event as part of Tech Week, which will be in the first week of October all across the US, with hubs in San Francisco, New York, and LA. So if you're interested in tech and AI, check it out, Tech Week.
But yeah, this is going to be a super interesting event. Tech Week is one of the largest tech decentralized conferences, I think, in the world, right? And we're going to have a lot of really great companies that are going to be here. So you can check out, we'll put the link in the description. So if you want to RSVP, please do so, because I think it's going to fill up fast. So if you're listening to this, you can be one of the first. But yeah, don't sleep on that, because I really think that this event is going to have a wait list. Most of them do, but this one, since it's part of Tech Week, I imagine the wait list will get quite big. So it'll be good to RSVP as soon as possible. So yeah, anyways, getting back to OpenAI's GPT-4B announcement. So this is actually really exciting. The reason we decided to take a break before talking about this is it took me a while to wrap my head around this article. So OpenAI, they actually announced this a few weeks ago, and it took me probably a good solid day to actually get through the article and have enough information about it to be able to pretend like I understand it. So basically, to summarize, OpenAI leveraged AI to make cells younger and repair DNA damage. So I don't know, Shashank, if you're familiar with the different hallmarks of aging, but there's a bunch of different things where if you look at a cell and say hey, this is an old cell versus a young cell. One of the things that is different is DNA damage. Another thing is telomere length or whatever, right? There's a bunch of different things that you look at for aging of a cell, but they were able to use AI to actually undo a lot of the DNA damage. So what does that mean? That means that this might be a stepping stone to how we can have longevity thanks to AI. So now, what did OpenAI do? Well, OpenAI, they worked with this company called Retrobiosciences to use AI to help them program cells and then make a cell into an induced pluripotent stem cell. So all right. So what that is in your body, right? There are a bunch of cells, right? So, you've got your skin cells, your brain cells, your lung cells, your heart cells, your liver cells, whatever, right? And it turns out that every single one of those cells has the exact same DNA. So like if you take like a cheek swab, like you can look at the DNA and then it's obviously going to put your cheek, but like that cell could have been a heart cell or it could have been a brain cell, but it happened to be like a cheek cell or a skin cell or whatever, right? So it actually turns out that it is possible to turn like a skin cell into a brain cell if you want to. So there was a researcher, his name was Yamanaka, and he found these proteins that could be used to make a cell into another cell. So his name was Shinya Yamanaka. I think he was from Tokyo, but I think he was doing this work in California, I think around Berkeley or something. But basically, there are these proteins called transcription factors that can be used to essentially modify what a cell is. So my rough understanding is that like in your cell, so like, you've got trillions of cells in your body and you have the DNA, which is describing, what makes you, right? But in order to make a cell, a particular type of cell, you don't actually use all the DNA at the same time. What you do is you actually will use some subsection of DNA, like certain parts of the DNA will turn on and certain parts will not be on. And based off of what's on and what's not on, it will determine like the type and of cell and also like other behaviors that the cell will have, right? So it might make it your skin cell might make it a heart cell, it might make it a liver cell, it might make the cell healthy, it might make the cell not healthy, it might make it old, whatever, right? There's all types of properties that the cell might have based off of like the different parts of the DNA that are turned on. Well, it's actually possible to make it so that you can take these bits of DNA and you can use these transcription factors, these proteins, and there's actually 4 of them called Yamanaka factors, which puts those cells into what is called a pluripotent state. So what that means is like pluri, like many, potent, I guess like potency. So it's like you can make like the stem cell into like this pluripotent state, which means you can induce it to turn into something else. So like that would mean that you could turn like, your skin cell into your brain cell. So now it turns out, and actually the Shinya Yamanaka, he was able to win the Nobel Prize for this. So we've known about this for a while, but one of the main problems with the techniques that he used is you actually can't turn like 100% of the cell into another cell. Like if I want to turn like my skin cell into a brain cell, like I can't turn 100% into it, right? So it's going to be like some percentage, right? So I think in the article they were saying like maybe it's like 0.1%, maybe 1%, but it's really hard to turn all of one cell into another type of cell. So that's where AI comes in. So what OpenAI did with the team at RetroBio is they were able to make it where, and I think we can maybe like throw in some, are you able to share your screen?
I can share my screen. Yeah.
So there are some pictures. So for the audio listeners, we're going to show some pictures here, but if you look at the picture, right? So on day 1, you can see that we're just starting with regular fibroblasts. So so what we're doing is we're looking at an image, and the image is mostly dark with a little bit of white specks. So the white specks are the induced pluripotent cells. So those are the cells that have been able to turn into like the other type of cell, right? And then after 10 days, they like in the middle. Now the middle picture shows the cells turning into induced pluripotent stem cells. And then if you look at the picture for the audio listeners, there's a couple of white dots. So it's like, almost nothing is pluripotent. And now it's like, maybe, I don't know, 5-10% of the cell is a pluripotent state. And then if you look at the image on the right, this is what OpenAI was able to come with. So they were able to modify some of the Yamanaka factors, and they were able to make it so a bunch of the cell is actually now in that pluripotent state. So as we can see, it's way better. And I guess from my understanding is when you do this research, or like when you do the cell reprogramming, and you're trying to make the cells pluripotent, and if you want to optimize the process, it's a very computationally intensive thing to do, because there's about 2,000 transcription factors that you could use, and you're not just going to use like 2,000. You're going to have to use the 2,000 at a particular spot in the DNA, or in a particular protein, and the protein are oftentimes very big. So, like for example, I think one of the proteins that they were using has about 200 or something, 200 something amino acids, and then it's like you could do like 2,000 mutations to those potentially 200 amino acids, which is very what you call computationally infeasible. So OpenAI, they claim that it was on the order of magnitude of 10 to the 100,000 mutations that you could do on a particular protein. And I actually did the math on my own. I think it's a little bit less than that. I think it's actually like around 10 to the 300 something. But anyways, regardless, whether it's 10 to the 1,000, 10 to the 300, I think it's around 10 to the 80 is the number of like atoms or molecules in the universe. So this is huge. So like the idea is you can use AI to help you predict what modifications that you can do to the cell that will be more effective. So then you don't have to just like try to do a bunch of point mutations in a single protein, but you can use AI to maybe give you the best candidates to figure out how to modify the different cells. So in theory, we might be able to use this technique along with AI to help us rejuvenate our cells and maybe live forever. So very exciting stuff.
That is really exciting. So let me see if I understand it. OpenAI is taking a computationally very expensive task and using AI to come up with better correlation, better matching, and find sequences to solve this problem of changing one kind of a cell into another. It kind of sounds similar to, or not similar, but knowing nothing about this, except for, you mentioning this about an hour ago before we started the podcast, it sounds like they're in a very similar space to DeepMind with AlphaFold, but a little bit of Googling or Geminiing shows that they differ a little bit in the sense that AlphaFold focuses on predicting structures in the research realm, whereas the OpenAI's model focuses on the engineering side by figuring out how to find these patches and make some modifications.
Yeah. So I think that AlphaFold and this are kind of complementary. So my understanding is that OpenAI actually used AlphaFold to help them also predict. So I think that both are, kind of complementary to each other. So like AlphaFold is folding a protein within a cell, and then this is showing you how to modify the transcription factors that actually are also proteins to better like manipulate cells. So they're very tangentially related, and I don't want to pretend to I know exactly where you'd use one over the other, but they're definitely along the same vein here. So I think they can support each other.
Yeah, this sounds very similar in the same vein as a lot of the developments made in other fields where we use AI to accelerate things that are computationally intensive, where a brute force solution of searching this entire space of possibilities is unwieldy. Like you mentioned, the number of atoms in the universe are a certain amount, and a lot of the tasks of searching a certain space, like figuring out all the possible board combinations for chess, is way more than the number of atoms in the universe. So to get around that, we kind of use AI to reduce that search space to find the optimal path and come up with a better solution.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know if I would call it the optimal path, because I think that a lot of times in AI, you will find local minima or you'll find like a good enough solution, but it's also just like a much cheaper solution than finding the actual optimum. Because I think in order to find the optimum, you probably have to do some sort of brute force, or you're trying everything. Because how would you know if it's like actually the optimum protein structure unless you like actually tried a bunch of them? And I think AI is just going to help you predict to get closer to the optimum, and then maybe once you get a little bit closer, then you could experiment from there.
Yeah, awesome. That's exciting news. I'm personally excited that OpenAI is focused on specific domains, because they've been focused on this AGI goal, where G stands for general intelligence, and they kind of sacrifice narrow performance in narrow domains for overall improvements in the general domain. But I think they kind of accepted certain limitations of that approach when they decided to focus on coding, building OpenAI's codex and realizing the economic impact of coding. And it seems like they're also realizing the impact in the scientific domain, biology, research, and medical bioengineering with GPT-4B Micro. So that's awesome.
Yeah, super exciting stuff. So also in other news, breaking news, Meta just announced their new Ray-Ban glasses. So this stuff hot off the press. I think it was announced like 2 hours ago. So you heard it here first. Always come to the Gen AI Meetup Podcast when you want to get the latest and greatest tech news. But yeah, so this is exciting because this is just a new generation of the Meta glasses. But what's cool about this is it has visual aspects as well. So this actually is kind of like a real life Google Glass. I don't know if you, Shashank, do you remember like the Google Glass kind of teaser video from maybe 10, 15 years ago where they showed like the guys skydiving with the Google Glass, and then showed, I think it was like stuff like that. And then, they were showing like the turn by turn directions and, talking to the glasses and all that stuff. It seems like Meta now kind of made that real, and you'll be able to buy it on September 30th. So that is incredibly exciting.
Yeah, so the big difference with this is that it has a tiny heads-up display as opposed to the previous Ray-Ban Meta glasses, which I've used. They're kind of very big and clunky, and they only allow you to record and listen to music and AI assistance. But this will also be able to show you visual feedback, show you maps, some navigation, and other kinds of relevant information. And one cool thing that Mark and I were chatting about is that it can allow you to enter information by an accompanying device that wraps around your wrist, I think, and detects the motions in your arm. And a couple other companies have experimented in this space. I think like the Apple Watch can detect some kind of gestures in your arm. So this accompanying device with the Ray-Ban new glasses allows you to type by drawing out characters on any kind of surface. So you can like type on your leg to respond to messages in the Ray-Ban ecosystem.
Yeah, so I think that really solves a big pain point for a lot of these smart devices, because let's say I could do all of that with my phone, right? I may not want to say like, hey, Alexa, show me pictures of a cheetah when I'm on the bus, right? Like if I'm in public, I'm at the mall, I don't want to have to use voice commands, but it's really nice to be able to not have to look down and just use your fingers along your leg or something like that to make gestures to interact with your headset. So this means you can stay present in the moment. You don't need to take out your phone, look down, maybe walk into something. You don't have to do texting and walking. You can still look ahead, be fully engaged with the world around you, and still interact with your AI devices without uttering a word. And that, I think, is incredibly exciting. And the fact that we can actually buy this in like a couple weeks, that is so exciting. I really am considering buying this now. I don't know. It's $800, so I don't know if I want it that bad, but I kind of want it. It looks really cool.
Yeah, I'd be curious to try it out and see what kind of use cases it makes sense to actually use this kind of a product. Because the previous generation of Ray-Ban glasses that I use, they leave like big dimples on your nose because it's actually very heavy and it's not that comfortable to wear. But if the use case is compelling enough, I think I might be okay with some level of discomfort.
Well, the thing is I have been wearing glasses ever since I was like 3 years old. So if I have to wear something slightly heavier, but it gives me a bunch of features, like if I can listen to music and get my turn-by-turn navigation, and if it can have that wristband that can look at my muscle movements, I don't know. I mean, that's pretty compelling. And your like glasses in general aren't actually that cheap anyways, right? Like if you go to the eye doctor and you want prescription glasses, I mean, they're going to charge you a couple $100s. So this is for a few $100s more, you can get all these cool AI features. So I don't know. I mean, yeah, you could probably get some cheaper glasses if you buy them online or something. So that's what I typically do. But if you go through the eye doctor in the United States, it's still pretty expensive. So this is just a little bit more. You can get prescription.
The next thing that kind of ties into these in terms of consumer hardware is the announcement of Apple's new iPhone 17 line, which includes finally a new set of Apple Intelligence features. So this is kind of catching up with some of the features that Android has had. So one of the things that they showcased is call transcription, which also supports multiple languages in real time, allowing you to see exactly what someone is saying despite speaking a different language. And I believe you're able to communicate with a different language too in real time. And you can speak in English, speak to someone in Portuguese, for example. It'll translate that to Portuguese to your receiver, and that person can talk in Portuguese and it'll translate it back to English and you can hear that. I think your mileage might vary depending on what language you're using, what language to language, because they will probably do well on language pairs that are very popular and that have a lot of training data. I was actually just testing this out with someone else who was Chinese, and she was trying to use 11 Labs. So this isn't necessarily Apple Intelligence, but 11 Labs translated her English podcast into half Mandarin, half Cantonese, and didn't use the exact vernacular. So it's like a little bit messy, a little bit all over the place. But if you're using popular, maybe like Western languages that often have translation pairs, this might do pretty well.
Yeah, I think this is really exciting. And especially, I don't know if it will be able to, but it would be really great if it could do it offline. Because I've been doing a lot of traveling lately, and sometimes I'm in places where I don't speak the language. So I've been taking full advantage of a lot of these translation features. So the one that I've been using a lot is actually my wife. She got a Xiaomi phone, and the Xiaomi phone has the translation built into it, which is really nice because actually it didn't work fully offline. But we had data, so it was okay. And it really saved us a lot, when we were, in some of these other countries. So I like that Apple's doing this. And I think what's also really exciting is, in theory, if you have the new AirPods, like I think it was the AirPods 3.
Yeah.
If two people have it, then it'd be basically like the Babelfish, right? So it's like, I could wear my AirPods, you could wear your AirPods, we could have a conversation in real time. So like I could talk, it could translate, the other person can talk, it could translate, and then we wouldn't have to wait. Because I think one of the problems that you have right now is if I mean it's one thing if there's text being written as you talk, right? But then it's another thing if you have to speak and then you have to wait for it to translate the audio and then output the audio and then the other person to wait. So it's like one step you have to listen, wait for.
It's a little delayed.
It's could be a lot delayed, right? So if somebody says something,
Depending on how good the translation is, yeah.
right? But then it's like you have to wait for them to speak it out, and then they listen to it, and then they respond, and then it's like way slower than having to have a real-time conversation. But with this, if you both have AirPods, you could just talk in real time and listen in real time and not have to use a phone or anything else like that in between, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, I agree. I wouldn't say it's necessarily exciting, but I'm glad it's finally here. Apple has been touting Apple Intelligence for a long time. I know I bought my mom the iPhone 16 about a year ago, hoping that Apple Intelligence would finally be here. And it's still slowly trickling in. But to summarize, I think the key features are we have real-time call transcription. You're able to have a real-time in-person communication with someone else using AirPods. They also have like video call transcription, which allows you to talk to someone and also see what they're saying if you can't understand. And some other features which have been available on the Google phones, which is like circle to search, which allows you to take a screenshot of an image and then highlight what it is and ask, I believe, ChatGPT or the built-in Apple Intelligence what it is, look for things similar to it, maybe buy something that looks like it.
So that's kind of like the Google Lens.
Google Lens, but they've rebranded it a couple times. Circle to search. You can just take a screenshot, and it's available in Photos. It's also available on like the Samsung phones. And one last thing is personalized fitness insights. So I think this might be exciting for those of you who are fitness enthusiasts. I know we have a couple listeners who are regulars for our meetup. But this will probably be really helpful for them to design personalized workouts and challenge them by using a lot of biometric data. That's something also that Pixel has been working on for a while with the Fitbit that has a personalized fitness coach that also uses a lot of biometric data to keep pushing you and keep you in like certain target zones and optimize your workout. But I kind of wanted to have an analogy for all these features and show where the other competitors are. So Google released the Pixel 10 about a month ago and released a lot of similar features. So
because you bought the Pixel 10, right?
I did. I have it in my pocket right now. And honestly, it's a very tiny, minor upgrade. It looks identical to the Pixel 9. But some of the offers were so good that it was a very good deal to upgrade. But its biggest features are AI focused. And if you actually look at some of the benchmarks, they're slower. They have a significantly worse GPU than their competitor Samsung. So this is not for gaming. This is specifically an AI phone. And they have that with their new AI chip, similar to Apple, which has been focusing a lot on their neural cores. And what can you do with all of that? So you do a lot of these on-device features, which is like translation and showing helpful context when you need it. So this was something that I actually was pretty delighted by. When I was on a call with my dentist, it showed my calendar event for that specific dentist on a specific date with the details. And I was like, oh, this is really handy because I wanted to call and reschedule, and it showed me that right there. So that
so it was actually listening to your phone call?
No.
Oh, okay.
It was able to see the caller ID and correlate that with the calendar invite that I had that says dentist appointment and show me that calendar event, the time, the date, the location. And I was able to reference that as I was speaking to the dentist's office to reschedule.
Oh, so it looked at the calendar on your phone and then it knew that you were, but how did it know that you were talking about calling to reschedule?
It had no idea, but it knew that I was calling a dentist because it has a caller ID. and it was able to, I assume, match those two things.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's cool. And also, I like that they're not listening to your phone call too in order to tell that, because that would be, I mean, I don't know. I'd be okay with it. I feel like Google would be a good steward of the data. I wouldn't be that concerned if they were listening to the phone calls, especially if they got a lot of interesting things. But then I would be a little bit concerned that, it might be subpoenaed by law enforcement or something like that. Because, yeah.
True. But honestly, like, I don't understand people's concern with giving companies data. Google has all of your emails. All of these banks have all of your money stored all in digital cloud servers. And so what are you actually afraid of? All of your data is already in the cloud, accessible by all these companies. All of your passwords are in some tiny startup called Bitwarden. And so I don't understand what the hesitation is with storing one additional piece of information that isn't even that sensitive.
I don't know. I mean, you could debate if that's sensitive or not. I think most phone calls probably I wouldn't care, but I think it's more of like the principle of it, right? Where I kind of have a mental I don't know, like vision that like the police in throughout the world, let's talk about America, have nearly an HD TV, like 4K TV that they're looking at of almost every single person in America or the world, and they just know every little tiny thing about you. And then the way I look at it is there's just like a couple of like dead pixels on that 4K TV that just they can't see in, right? It's like, that's the signal messages, or that's like, your cash transactions, or that's, the conversations that you had naked in the middle of a field with no one around, right? These are the types of things that the US government really would like to be able to, know what you're saying. It's like, hey, was that transaction done with cash? Like, did you do that tip with your credit card with cash? Like, I don't know. And I think that it's nice to be able to have an ability to have privacy, right? Like, I think that most people have nothing to hide, but like sometimes people do have something to hide, and it may be just embarrassing, right? Like if you're calling your doctor to talk about like the rash that you have, you don't necessarily want like some law enforcement officer to be able to subpoena that, or you don't want one of these big tech companies to know about like the medical issue that you have, or that you are late on your credit card payments or whatever it is.
But I'm glad you're offering our listeners a polarizing opinion, because I admit that I'm on one extreme where I'm completely happy with companies having all of my data to give me more personalized ads and make things more relevant and more seamless for me. But I do realize a lot of people are very focused on privacy, have a lot of mistrust of large corporations or just any other entity having access to your sensitive data, especially things that are meant to be ephemeral, like a phone call that isn't supposed to be stored anywhere, because traditional telecoms, you send voice signals over the wire, and it isn't actually stored anywhere. So I believe all of these mobile calling features are on device, and if they store something, it might be ephemeral, again on device, to give you something relevant. And I know Apple in particular is championing this privacy focused architecture, where they have a private cloud, and a lot of it is ephemeral, and even Apple doesn't have access to your actual personal data that's stored in messages, phone calls, etc. But yeah, I'm happy that Apple is finally pushing some AI features. One final thing that I did want to mention is they have like an interesting Zapier alternative. They've always had this shortcuts app, and now you can build intelligent shortcuts by using AI to plug into your notes, your messages, iCloud, and take action when you receive some messages, and use AI to look for certain text, translate things, or do some inference, make some judgments, guesses, and do something else. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah, very exciting stuff. I mean, it's nothing necessarily new, but the fact that Apple's doing it, I think is exciting, because now all the billion iPhone users who didn't actually have any of those features now have them. So it's like, yeah, you could say use an Android phone, and I mean, like, a lot of people do. I use an Android phone, but it's like there's a lot of people who don't use an Android phone. So the fact that everybody gets this nice polished feature in a like on a silver platter by Apple is great.
So moving on to the other end of hardware, I was personally excited about the rise of robotics news this week. So Figure AI, which is one of the leading humanoid robotics companies in the US, has raised another massive funding round of about $1 billion at a $39 billion valuation to make humanoid robots, which are actually pretty decent. I know we talked about them in one of our previous episodes, and we showed a demo of multiple Figure robots coordinating with each other to put away dishes or like fold laundry or something. And they are continuing to work on their next generation of robots, which I believe is 3x more capable in terms of compute, performance, latency, etc. And I'm personally excited. I think this is first going to be deployed in industry, in manufacturing, where the constraints are much narrower and you're able to do tasks repeatedly and not have so much variation in the environment, as opposed to robots in your home, which is like the ultimate dream. Like in Jetsons, you have someone who can clean, cook, and do all the chores for you so you can relax and enjoy life. But I think the number of things that could go wrong in your house is like significantly more than a very controlled factory environment. So a lot of these companies are deploying robots in automobile manufacturing, actually. There's multiple Chinese companies. I think there's a really good video by Cold Fusion, which I love. They talked about the growth of robotics as an industry, how there's two polarizing sides, one in the US and one in China. China, as we all know, is amazing at manufacturing, at bringing costs down, at scaling any kind of operation to generate massive amounts at very low prices. And it's the same thing with robotics. So they have like tons of robotics companies, partially because of some of the subsidies by the government. Multiple cities, Beijing and Shanghai, have offered $1.4 billion each in subsidies to various startups to kind of bolster this ecosystem. And this is coming from their president, Xi himself. And I think that's kind of subsidizing the cost of experimenting and building a lot of new startups in manufacturing. But one of the companies that often comes up is Unitree, which has made a humanoid robot, which is about like 4 foot tall, but can walk around, balance itself, and isn't as dexterous as some of these other companies that we're talking about, like Figure AI, and also Tesla, which is focused on dexterity by mimicking human hands, because the human hand is a very complex thing with many degrees of motion, many degrees of freedom, and can do everything from pick up a soda can to build rockets to do some knitting. So it has a lot of versatility. And that's where we kind of see the differences between China and the US. So the US, all these companies are focused on the intelligence of the robots, and the US companies are ahead at this moment. But the Chinese companies are focused on manufacturing, and they're significantly better at price and scale.
Yeah, a lot of these figure things are super exciting. So I keep on getting recommended videos of the figure robots doing different household tasks. So I saw a video of it doing some cooking, I believe. I saw it folding laundry. I saw it with clothes. And it really feels like they're trying to build just your regular handy household helper. So I want that, right? I want to have a robot that can help me around the house. I think it would be just the most amazing thing to say, hey, figure robot, go, take out the trash, do the dishes, and bring me a beer, because and then I'm just going to go watch TV. I think that would be a incredibly exciting future.
I think their founder, Brett Adcock, who has worked on multiple startups before in hardware, I think it was like vertical takeoff aircrafts before, but he claims the first humanoid robots in people's homes in about like 3 years or something. I'm not sure how feasible that is, but the current progress in robotics is just insane. I remember when I was in college and the first round of DARPA challenges were happening to usher in some research and innovation in robotics. And the robots back then were so janky. They were able to, they were focused on self-driving a little bit. So it was like cars trying to drive themselves, and they could barely go a very simple path. And then came humanoid robots, or even like robots with multiple limbs that could walk on their own. They were super janky. Now that seems like a solved problem. You have robots that are a couple $1,000s that you can buy that can move around with ease. They do have to be pre-programmed a little bit, but now we are thinking about robots with human level intelligence and dexterity, kind of ushered in by a lot of the advances in LLMs and multimodal models, which are able to give these mechanical objects a lot of the intelligence that we get with LLMs for free. So they're able to get a lot of world understanding and use that to then decide what kind of actions to take, which is also kind of powered by different kinds of LLM, which they've renamed to vision language action models that are able to understand, reason, and act on the real world.
Yeah, because the architecture for a lot of these models is pretty interesting, how they tie the vision language action model to like a more powerful model, maybe running on the device or maybe in the cloud, right? Mm-hmm. So it's like they have a small model that is able to make quick decisions in close to real time. Mm-hmm. And then they have a bigger model to do a little bit of thinking, kind of like the system 1 and system 2 thinking, mm-hmm. where you're able to make quick decisions. Like, for example, if I put my hand on like a hot stove, mm-hmm. I'm going to be able to remove it really quickly. Mm-hmm. But if I'm playing chess, I'll be able to sit and think for a while about the next move I'm going to make. Anything in between. So I guess in theory that the robots would be able to do both, which is pretty cool. And also, we also see things that are in other robots, like Waymo getting the permit to test their robo-taxis at the San Francisco International Airport.
I love it.
Yeah.
I used a Waymo for the first time with a friend who actually used to work there. And he took us on this ride several months ago with another friend who was visiting from Chicago. And this was just like a mind-blowing moment for my friend who lived in like the Midwest, is used to the world not being as tech focused as it is here in SF, and we kind of take things for granted, but we have cars that can drive themselves completely throughout the city, and now they can pick people up at the airport, which is insane.
Yeah, I mean, in the past, you had to either get a friend or find a taxi. Now you call an Uber, and then in the near future, the Waymo just can be synced with your calendar and just show up. You won't even have to call it; it'll just know, and you'll have your credit card. But actually, I was thinking about, where is the future going to be? Like, what will cars look like going forward, right? And I think that in the near-ish future, maybe 5 to 10 years. I think it'll take a while, but these Waymos or self-driving cars are going to be rolled out, and I think most of the technology is already there. But I think it's more of like a regulatory thing, right? It's like you have to allow the cities and the counties and the organizations to allow you to run your self-driving car. There's the liability thing. It's like, hey, like, are we really going to take on the companies are going to have to say, like, are we really going to take on the liability of not having a driver? Because what if the car hits somebody? What if we get in an accident? There's a lot of things that could go wrong, right? But I'm assuming that most of these regulatory things we're going to be able to solve in, let's say, 10 years, for sure, in most places. And I think that what will happen is a lot of the newer cars that are being built just will have the ability to have self-driving, and then eventually I think the governments will allow self-driving from maybe any consumer car. And then now, what does that look like? So assuming like the regulatory and the tech things get solved, which I think the tech is pretty much there. It was still fine tuning, right? But within like a year or two, I think like it'll be quite well in just North America, right? Where the roads are fairly good. But then what does that look like? Well, I think that we're going to see probably very few drivers, right? Most people just have the cars being driven around. And I think probably the new business model that we'll see is people will just start buying up fleets of these cars personally, as like a little side hustle. You could probably buy, start with one and then, maybe increase like 2, 3, 10 cars, 1,000 cars that you would have. And then all the cars would just work for you. The owners of the cars would be able to get nice passive income. And then they would have to make sure the cars are in good running shape, right? Like you'd have to make sure that you're able to keep the electric car charged every 50,000 miles or so. You're going to replace the tires, any wear and tear, somebody tears a seat or throws up in the back of the car, that might need to be handled by a human. But I think that we're going to start seeing it where there's just going to be less people actually driving the cars themselves. And then I predict that in the future we're going to start seeing individuals and also companies just starting to own fleets of these robo taxis, and it'll kind of replace Uber in a certain sense, but it'll be new companies that are going to come out. Mark my words, you're going to see that in like 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, this was the dream of self-driving when Waymo and Tesla first started working on this. But turns out it's a lot harder to iron out that last 5% of self-driving than people expected. But they've made a lot of rapid advances recently after they switched from very specific models that figure out, okay, this is a traffic light, and another model that figures out road signs, and another one that detects pedestrians, to consolidating all of that into one single model, which then, similar to the progress in LLMs, develop like emergent capabilities and are able to solve like a lot of edge cases that they didn't even explicitly train these models to handle. So along those lines, I personally have a Tesla, and it can drive me from my parking garage to my office with like a single tap, and me not doing anything except for maybe deciding to park at the very end, because sometimes it's slow at parking and I'm a little impatient. But it is so incredibly advanced compared to what it was in 2018 when I got my first one. So the first one was the hardware one, which was their on-device AI hardware to do inference for the self-driving technology.
So you had the Tesla Model 3 before, right?
The Tesla Model 3, which was released in 2018, one of the first models, one of the first batches of that model, with the first version of the self-driving technology that was more like lane assist. Now I'm on the AI 4 hardware version 4, which can drive itself, completely detect stop signs, stop lights, pedestrians, and drive more naturally compared to the previous one, which was still kind of like mechanical. It would like switch lanes really quickly, speed up really fast, slow down really suddenly. Whereas this, it is very much like a human driver, where it'll find little gaps between cars and like slowly switch lanes as the other car is leaving this lane, and do a lot of things that seem very human-like. And often, like most of the time, it is a better driver than I am because of how smooth and reliable it is. And
So I'm curious, what's kind of like the use case of that? Because I think most of our listeners may not have one of these brand new Teslas. So I have a couple of questions about this. So like when you get into the car, like how does that work? Do you just like speak the address of your workplace? Like does it have like your office saved? You just like hit go. Like what does that look like?
Yeah. So they have their own dashboard, which is one of, honestly, in my personal opinion, one of the best softwares in a car. It has a massive screen, and I can like tap on pre-saved addresses for my home or the office, or I can talk to their on-device AI and say, hey, navigate to blah, 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 navigate to, the Google building, or navigate to this grocery nearby, or navigate to fast food, and it be a list of fast food options. So I'm able to navigate by voice by tapping in an address, and it'll take me straight there. To activate the full self-driving, it's $99 a month, which I pay for because I tried the trial and I was hooked on how convenient it is, especially for long trips to go from here to SF, which is about an hour away, and to take over when I'm tired, because it's a lot of effort, and you don't realize how much effort it is until someone takes it away, or I guess when you're in the passenger seat. But driving with self-driving is kind of in the middle, where it's not as much effort as driving yourself, but it's also not as little effort as sitting in the passenger seat. So it's a little more relaxing. It's a little less taxing, and I've kind of gotten used to it, and it's really, really good. One thing that I do use it for is eating occasionally, because I grab dinner at work and then come back home and I'm like, I can just eat and listen to something, a podcast. I could technically even like put a screen in front of me and watch it, but I don't do that. But to do things with my hands while still paying attention to the experience is really convenient.
So how often have you had it where it's like a disengage and made you drive?
Most of the times I do that is because of my impatience.
But not your impatience, but like, has it ever just stopped the self-driving and then made you take over?
Most of the times when it does that is when I'm not paying attention. So I think in an effort to reduce liability, because there have been people who have died when using the self-driving technology, because it is risky. You are putting your life in the hands of a software. So to reduce the risk of something going wrong, they trigger an alert. They flash the screen, play some noise, which is like a very alerting sound, anytime they detect you not paying attention. So they have a tiny camera inside the car looking at you, and if you're not paying attention to the road, if you're looking down, if you're looking to the right, especially if you're staring at your phone. And I think they've developed the algorithm really well to where it can detect anytime you have a phone. Anytime it does that, it gives you a warning. It says, hey, pay attention to the road. After like 4 to 6 times or something that it detects that, it starts like blaring horns and flashing lights and says, you're done for the end of this trip. No more self-driving for you until you park and start a new trip.
And do you have to keep your hands on the wheels, or like you fully remove the hands from the wheel?
You could fully remove your hands from the wheel for short durations, but it does require some tension on the wheel every couple of seconds or so. So if it doesn't detect some kind of weight, some kind of presence, then it'll also flash the screen and ask you to, jostle the steering wheel a little bit.
Okay. I mean, it seems really cool. And it sounds like it almost never disengages where, assuming you're paying attention, like, I guess, have you ever had it yet where you're fully engaged, your hands on the wheel, but like, it just says, I don't know how to handle the situation. You do it. You take over.
Excuse me. My old car used to do that a lot because the Tesla self-driving is built entirely on cameras. It has no LiDAR or radar. Actually, I believe the previous one had radar, but they even removed that with the new one. And the old car was really bad in bright light and really cloudy visibility. So there were times where the old one couldn't detect the road, and it was like, shit, I can't see, take over right now. The new one does that less because I think they added one additional camera on the bottom, which is able to compensate for these kinds of visibility issues. The one time where it did fail was when there was a construction zone, and a ramp was closed. So it was navigating with Google Maps, and it was supposed to get on the ramp, but the ramp had a blockade, and it kept going. I didn't want to try to see how far it would go before it would uh, figure out an alternative route. So I took over. So I think there are cases where the road conditions are, there's like some construction going on, or there's something unexpected, like significantly unexpected. Like there's a bridge that's broken, like you're going to go off the cliff. I would be a little worried in those kinds of situations, and I do take over.
Okay, that's fair. And I think this is really exciting. But I do personally feel like Tesla is a little bit fast and loose with their naming on this. And I think that it should not be called full self-driving.
I agree.
I think that, like, if you are going to call something full self-driving, I want to be able to go and take a nap in the back as it drives me to my destination, right? Like, I should not have to touch the wheel, but it is completely incorrect to call it full self-driving, because if it's full self-driving, I'm not driving. Like, the car is driving for me. And then also, I'll believe them when Tesla can take full liability for any accidents that the car gets into. And until that happens, I don't think they should be legally allowed to call it full self-driving. I think they could call it, like, driving assist. Like,
mostly full self-driving.
Yeah, like mostly full self-driving be fine. Like, full self-driving, but you're actually technically the one driving if we get in an accident. Like, that'd be fine to call it. But I think this is just dangerous, because now people are going to think it can do more than it can. I was against the name autopilot as well for similar reasons, because it implies that the car just completely drives itself. And I mean, it does, except you're still at fault when it's in an accident, and sometimes the car will just rapidly disengage right before the accident, which is scary. Actually, did you ever see that Mark Rober video where he was
we're talking about this?
Yeah, I think we did talk about it, but just to bring it up again, Mark Rober, the YouTuber, he had the visual camera versus like the LiDAR, and then it turned out that if you draw the road onto a wall, the Tesla will just drive right into the wall, into a small child behind it, because the wall just looks like the road, and the visual cameras just can't tell. So I don't know why Tesla doesn't use the LiDAR. I mean, like, the LiDAR sensors are actually not that expensive anymore. I mean, like, they're in the iPad. And if you could have a LiDAR in an iPad, which is, sub $1,000, if I'm paying $50,000 for a car, like, why can't you put that sensor in? I don't understand it.
Yeah. But to close off this episode, I think along the same lines of Tesla's hardware, they're working towards their next generation of AI 5, which is rumored to be 40 times better. And I think given Elon's past claims, I think we should be take that with a grain of salt. But in terms of capability, or in terms of raw compute power, it's about 8 times better. It has about 9 times more memory. So all in all, they're training an order of magnitude bigger model to drive better on better hardware, which I think will allow them to create a better driving experience and handle more edge cases. So I think they're getting closer to this dream of full self-driving. But getting to 100% is like a big feat. We actually saw a friend of ours a few days ago take the Tesla robotaxi in SF, because they're in early preview or something, and he was sitting in the backseat with this self-driving Tesla, which actually had a human driver in the front seat, as you may have seen online, because I don't think they can just let a Tesla out there autonomously, because it's really hard to cover that last few percentage points.
Yeah, so my understanding is that the human driver, he wasn't touching the wheel.
No, he wasn't.
But he had his hands at 5 and 7, just hovering underneath the wheel. And our friend, he asked the driver, and he said, like, hey, how do you have an intervention? And he said, I'm not allowed to tell you that. So we have no idea, but all we know is that Waymo, when we were talking, I saw a Waymo drive right past your house with no driver. And, Waymo can do it, no driver. Tesla, they've got a driver, like, inches away from the wheel, like ready to take over any minute. So I don't know. I think that Tesla, I'm sure its tech is getting pretty good, but until Elon Musk has the balls to say, like, hey, look, like, I will take on full liability if there's an accident, I'll be riding in a Waymo from SFO for now.
One product that can't have a driver from Tesla is their new Optimus robot, which will also be powered by the same hardware or a similar hardware, their in-house AI chip. And they're focused primarily on the hands, as I mentioned earlier, because human dexterity is really hard. And it's been a challenge. The Chinese companies that I mentioned, they can't do anything with their hands. They don't even have fingers, as far as I know, the Unitree ones. Because for $6,000, I would be very surprised if you can build something that has a lot of fingers with fine-grained dexterity. But Elon recently had a massive stock buyback where he bought about $1 billion worth of Tesla stock to show his confidence in the future of their Optimus robotics line. Specifically, he thinks it'll be, an order of magnitude bigger than their car product line, and he equates that to, in terms of complexity, he thinks it's somewhere between building like a Model X, which is actually a kind of a complex car in terms of cars, because it has these fancy falcon wing doors which open up on the side, and very unnecessarily complicated. It's somewhere between the complexity of that and a spaceship. Him having experience leading companies that do both, he thinks the humanoid robot is somewhere in between. In terms of cost, he expects it to be like $20-something thousand. And I'm kind of excited to see robots running around. And same thing with the other companies. They're going to deploy that first in their factories to automate some of the manufacturing of their product line. Maybe partner with some of his Elon conglomerate of companies and put them in SpaceX to make some spaceships. And that's where it'll come first, but it'll be wacky, crazy world where you'll have robots in your home doing things for you.
Yeah, that's really exciting. And $20,000, it's a lot of money, but it's not that much money. I mean, that's like a cheap car. I mean, like, how much does a Toyota Corolla cost? Right? It's around $20,000, I think.
About that, yeah.
Right. So, I mean, like,
a cheap robot will be even cheaper. This is a top of the line robot,
right? So, and I mean, like, that's the new one.
This is the Model S of robots.
Cool. So that means that maybe you could have like a robot helper for under $1,000.
Oh, I mean, maybe one day.
I could see it, right? I mean, like, if the first one is $20,000, right? Well, maybe in couple of years after that, you'll see V2, and then maybe that one will be $10,000, and then like now the V1 that came out, like you'd be able to maybe buy that for $5,000, half of that, right? And then it doesn't take too many generations for you to be able to get a used V2 for under $1,000.
But I mean, come on, just thinking about the complexity of a phone and equating a humanoid robot, I feel like it would be still a little more expensive than a phone.
I don't know. I mean, hear me out. Like, can you or can you not go to a used car dealership and get a really, really crappy car that is like $500?
That's fair. Yeah.
Right.
You can get a crappy robot, I'm sure.
Right.
At some point in the future.
So that's what I'm saying, right? I think that like you may not be able to get like a brand new one, but I think that like maybe in 20 years, maybe less, right? Like we might be able to see it where you can just go to your used robot junkyard
with human level intelligence, though.
Yes, with human level intelligence, you'll be able to go to your robot junkyard and then buy like a $500 junker that like at the time was like 20 grand, but because it was newer robots that came out, just like, if I buy my 1999 Toyota Corolla, like I might be able to get that for like under $1,000, and it'll run just as well as a lot of these cars that came out in 2025, just because the technology is stable and they're really reliable. And we might be able to see it where these robots that come out in the year 2030, in the year 2050, we can buy them for pennies.
Pennies might be a little bit of a stretch, but I can see the price going down significantly, because right now the biggest cost is the intelligence for these robotics. It's about 80% of the cost of a robot is the intelligence. And with advances in computing, in hardware, in algorithms, I can see that dropping significantly. And the hardware industry is also maturing. There's no supply chain. There's no industry for all these actuators and all the parts, the sensors that go into building a robot, because this is such a new field. And given how fast it's growing, given how much of a push China has in this field, I'm kind of expecting that the cost is going to come down significantly, both on the intelligence side and the hardware side. And I'm sure we're going to have crazy capable robots in a couple of years.
Yeah, I'm with you, and I'm ready for that future.
Just a disclaimer: I do own stock in Tesla and Figure AI. # not financial advice. Do your own research, but I'm very bullish in this field.
You own stock in Figure?
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Because I thought there was like a private company.
They are, yeah. You can buy shares of private companies on secondary markets. There's a bunch of those available, but you need to be an accredited investor, which requires a certain income threshold or overall net worth for the last 2 years. It is a high risk, and I have yet to see any returns from any of my investments in secondary markets, but one can hope.
Yeah, I would consider getting that too, because I feel like there's a lot of opportunity there, and you might see a really big, nice, juicy return. Actually, in unrelated news, I think it was recently that the NASDAQ started tokenizing some of the securities.
What the heck?
Yeah.
What does that mean?
It just means that you put the stock on the blockchain.
What the heck? Well, what do you do with it?
I mean, you treat it like a regular stock, but the thing is like it doesn't really make a lot of sense to have a security like maintained and managed by
what is the benefit?
One of these banks or something like that. Oh, this so the reason it would be on a blockchain is, so for those that don't, I feel like most people probably know what a blockchain is, but like a blockchain is just a decentralized immutable ledger, meaning that like think of it as like an Excel spreadsheet that you can add like a row to the bottom. And you could record ownership transactions, you could record monetary transactions, but the thing is you know that nobody will be able to modify that later through math, right? So like if I have a stock exchange like the NASDAQ or something, and they're the ones are a brokerage keeping track of who owns what, like let's say, I don't know, the NASDAQ goes out of business, something happens to your brokerage, they get hacked, whatever. And then they might lose the record that you actually owned Figure, right? That's unlikely, but it is in the realm of possible things that could happen, right? So now you'll be able to say like, we know for sure based off of this like trustless blockchain ledger that like Shashank owns, X number of shares of Figure. And also because it's on a blockchain, you're able to trade that 24 hours with no intermediary in between. You won't ever have a transaction blocked by a bank potentially, because now in theory you'd be able to just like send that peer to peer, and you don't actually need the middleman anymore. So basically, with that, you're eliminating the middleman for stock transactions. So to me, it just makes more sense to have like that all out there, as a compared to needing to have like a bank keep track of how many shares that you own.
I don't know. Yeah, I'm not sold. I feel like this is one of these use cases where you're just shoving things on the blockchain, which makes it way more inefficient with, the what is it? The claim that it's gonna make it more secure, which I do agree if it's decentralized, but someone has to put in the compute to manage those nodes that maintains that ledger, and what is the incentive for that person when one company can do it in a centralized location, which you have to anyway, because if you're tokenizing a physical asset, you have to interface with someone and go through regulations, which is also an overhead that these banks maintain. So,
well, I don't know. A couple things. One, I would argue that this is not a physical asset. So, if you're tokenizing real estate,
that's fair.
Maybe sure, someone would have to go to check to make sure the house actually exists, right? So that's one thing, right? But stock certificates, I don't know the last time you had a physical stock certificate that you went to the bank and redeemed, but I have never
seen one my dad had like 20 years ago.
Okay, yeah. So nobody deals with physical stock certificates. Everything's digitized right now, and I think one of the fundamental problems that we have in the stock market is it closes, right? Like, I mean, you have a stock market that closes. I mean, like, what time is the market open? It opens at like 9:30 and then it closes at 4:30 or 5 or something like that, right? So you can't trade all day. And now you're beholden to these banks. And also, like, how slow is it to transfer money between banks with an ACH transaction, right? So it's like, I just opened a new bank account last week, and it took about 7 or 8 days to transfer the money from one bank account that I own to another bank account that I owned in a different bank. That's ridiculous. But it took them about, it took about like 1 or 2 days for the bank that I was sending from to make it so that I was down the money. So like it removed the money very quickly, but it took like 10 days for the other bank to say, yeah, we got the money, and then you have it to spend. So there was about almost a week that I had where I couldn't touch my own money because it was being sent between the banks. That would not happen on the blockchain. The slowest blockchains that we have right now, like probably Bitcoin is like the slowest blockchain, and that is like 10-minute transactions that are finalized onto the base layer, which is far faster than a week. And a lot of these blockchains finalize within a few seconds. So I would disagree that it's these banks are more efficient.
All right, folks. Catch us next week for the Generative AI Blockchain Podcast. Again, we're your hosts. I'm Shashank, and this is Mark. We're software engineers, part-time crypto enthusiasts, and informal financial advisors. No, we're not. But yeah, tune in again next week. Hope you got something out of today's hardware-focused podcast. And we'll catch you again next week.
All right. See you soon.